A December to remember?
Hey, welcome. Grab a coffee, grab a seat. If you're just joining us online, it's great to be together. If you're here in the room, it's great to be together as well. Please say hello on the chat if you are just joining in, so we can say hello, know that you're here. I know a number of people have either off ill or currently just avoiding a bit of people contact, so feel free to do so. Hey, awesome. I'm really cool. Really excited to be together and be with everyone today. We are wrapping up our Christmas series, and I was going to just share a few of childhood memories for me. Some of these you might remember. So when I was younger, we would watch a few Christmas sort of films, as you do now. But here were the things that we would watch at Christmas. So here's what came on. This was one of my absolute favorites. It was The Red-Nosed Reindeer, narrated by Burl Ives. That was one of, that was just, it's just really the original one. It was really cool. That came out in 1964. We would also watch A Charlie Brown Christmas. This is what we would watch every year. That came out in 1965. I don't know if some of you have seen that. Absolutely a brilliant thing if you haven't seen it yet. And then we would also watch this one every single Christmas, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the original one, 1966. And the thing was, I was born at a time when we didn't have on-demand TV, on-demand videos, and you couldn't just sort of just watch what you wanted when you wanted. Some of you will remember this, but I was born before Blu-ray. I was born before DVDs. I was born before laser discs. I was born before the VCR, the video cassette recorder that became so popular, and everyone had those things. You see, when I was younger, we had to wait. We actually had to wait for it to come on TV. And we knew it was the Christmas season because these films would come out, and we'd watch them. We'd also watch It's a Wonderful Life, of course, with Jimmy Stewart. Those. We'd watch these films as they came on TV, and we'd sit there as the family. We'd sit there and we'd have a bunch of popcorn, and we'd watch these movies. And if you're watching online, or if you're here in the room, maybe why don't you whisper to the person beside you, or tell them one of the films that you used to watch when you were younger, or maybe if some of you remember when it went from being silent and it became talking films. Some of you might remember those. So, but I used to love, and I still do love, the original story, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and that was what really made it sort of Christmassy for us. And if you've missed any of the previous weeks, what we've been doing last 2 weeks is we've taken one of the well-known Christmas films, and we've looked at some stuff from the Christmas film and looked how it relates to the gospel story, the story of Jesus and the story of the first Christmas. And if you've missed any of those, you can jump back online. You can catch up on them on YouTube. And if you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. That would be really helpful too, please. Thank you. But so today we're going to be looking at How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This original short story was written back in 1957 by Dr. Seuss about the Grinch, the bad-tempered, sort of Scrooge-esque type of character who hates Christmas, hates everything to do with Christmas, hates the people that celebrate Christmas, he hates everything about it, and he lives up in a mountain above the town of Whoville. And this is how he's described at the first paragraph. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all must have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. He hates Christmas so much, he decides to try and ruin it for all of the Whos who live in Whoville. He wants to just destroy it. He's got this dastardly plan, and he's just going to just get rid of all of Christmas. And if you've seen the original, or if you've read the book, or if you've seen any of the remake films, you know that the Grinch sneaks into the town, and he wants to just steal everything on Christmas Eve and get rid of all this stuff, get rid of everything. He steals the stockings, and steals from their dreams. He steals the food. He steals the presents. He just gets rid of all of it. He wants to get rid of every little bit of sparkle and glitter and shine at Christmas and get rid of the lot because he hates it. And after stealing all those toys and decorations and food, he travels back up to the mountain, and he's going to sit at the top of this mountain, and he's just going to wait and hear them wake up in the morning crying. And he's looking forward to their disappointment. He's looking forward to their heartache. He's looking forward to them suffering, really. But something happens, and I'm not going to give it away because you can watch the movie if you haven't seen it. But something happens that changes his heart. And he begins to realize that Christmas isn't about stuff after all. And it's a simple little story about stuff, but it's really good. And what I want to look at today is particularly an aspect from the film that was done in 2000 with the gregarious overactor Jim Carrey. So this version develops more of the backstory, and we want to look at that, particularly a character called Cindy Lou Who. That's the little girl who is in the story. And in the film, we begin to learn a bit more about why he is the way he is. Like, why is the Grinch really this way? Why does the Grinch behave this way, treat people this way, do stuff like this? Why does he treat people? And you get to hear a bit more about him in the film. We learn how he was mistreated and made fun of as a young child for being different. He was green and hairy. We see the Grinch grow up and become more mischievous and sinister. And as he gets older, he becomes more and more withdrawn. And he gets more and more angry and more bitter. And his heart gets more and more hard and callous, if you like. And he becomes a recluse eventually, living on top of this mountain, overlooking this village below. And Cindy Lou Who meets the Grinch. And of all people, she's the only one who's not afraid of him. And she's not put off by his gruff exterior. She's not put off by his sort of sharp and short and bristly demeanor and just the way he treats everyone. And she's not put off by it. And she's not driven away by his unkind remarks, and she's not driven away by his cynicism or criticism. And Cindy Lou Who does something incredible. She actually does whatever it takes to heal a heart. Even though everyone else is making fun of him, and everyone else laughs at him or derides him, she actually doesn't care what the other people are saying about this person. And even though he himself is angry and bitter and just aggressive and sharp and not nice to be around and shows no interest in her whatsoever, she still doesn't care. She still reaches out. She's still willing to do whatever it takes to heal the heart. And time again in the film, it's Cindy Lou who takes the initiative to get in contact with the Grinch, or to reach out with the Grinch, or to spend time with the Grinch. It's Cindy who speaks out on the Grinch's behalf when everyone else has disregarded and written him off. And it's Cindy who makes the first move. It's Cindy who gets pushed back again and again by the Grinch, but she still reaches out. She just still reaches out because she's willing to do whatever it takes to heal a heart. See, Cindy sees something that nobody else can see. She sees beyond that gruff exterior. She sees beyond his barriers, the sarcasm, the anger, the defenses and the offenses. She sees the Grinch in a way that nobody else has ever seen him before. In one of the scenes, the Grinch is pretending to be Santa Claus, and Cindy is with him, and she says this to him. She doesn't know that she's speaking to the Grinch because he's in a costume. And she says, "Santa, please don't forget the Grinch. I know he's mean and hairy and smelly. His hands might be cold and clammy, but I think he's actually kind of sweet." And at the end of the movie, the Grinch is on top of the mountain. And he has this experience when he realizes that Christmas isn't about all the stuff that he's stolen. And Christmas is more than all of these trappings. Christmas runs deeper than that. He begins to discover that for himself. And he's all alone on the top of the mountain. And suddenly, Cindy's there. And he's like, "Why are you here?" And this is what she says to him. She says, "I came to see you because no one should be alone at Christmas." Everybody else is in the town. Everybody else is having their sing-song. Everybody else is doing their thing. Yet she goes out of her way to go to the top of the mountain, to the one that caused a lot of the problems. She goes to the one. Once again, she reaches out. She makes the first move. And it's such a simple kid story, but it reminds me of that first story, that first Christmas story, when somebody else made the first move. See, Jesus, when he came to earth, he was a real person with, hands and feet and voice, and hung out with people, and he had friends. And one of his friends, one of the guys that hung out with him, was this guy named John. And John, before John died, John wrote down his experiences, his memoirs. It's like John's biography. And it's called the Book of John, but John wrote more than just that one book. John wrote a few letters as well. And in one of the letters that we have that John wrote, he actually writes this phrase. He says this, he says, "We love because he first loved us." It's in 1 John and it's 4:19. We love because he first loved us. John, this guy that hung out with Jesus, who saw everything with his eyes and heard everything with his ears, he really experienced it. They sat down, they shared meals together, they walked on journeys together, they were on boat rides together. He saw his good friend be mistreated, he saw his good friend put to death, he saw his good friend come back to life. This John, the eyewitness of everything that happened, writes this about his time. We love just because he loved first. It's a really simple phrase, isn't it? But actually, packs a lot in there. Because up to that point, people think religion, and people still think religion, is all about you doing everything you can to get your God's attention. See, you've got to try to behave in certain ways to make your God happy. That's happened throughout history. All peoples throughout history, all around the world, in all various cultures, they have an idea of a God and they do things for their God. They make sacrifices because they want their grain to grow more. They make sacrifices because they want their calves to be born. They want their cows to be fertile. They want their women to be fertile. They want it to stop raining. They want it to start raining. They want it to be sunny. So throughout history, ancient peoples have always tried to do something to get their own God's attention. Some cultures go to extreme lengths of cutting themselves or going into crazy frenzies, just doing whatever they can to try to get their God's attention. Sometimes they think they have to shout the loudest or sing the loudest or do whatever, perform the loudest to get their God's attention. And that's religion. Religion says you do what you can to see if your God is interested in you. And if you perform right, if you do the right things, then maybe you'll get your God to look at you. That's the basis for religion. Religion always involves you trying to please your God and you making all the effort to get their attention. But John says Jesus is nothing like this. That little simple verse, that maybe that was the first time you heard it, you'll remember it. We love because he first loved. We can respond because he responded first. He responded first. The story of Christmas reminds us that it wasn't us trying to get God's attention. It was actually God trying to get our attention. We love because he first loved us. The first Christmas story reminds us it's not us trying to reach out to God. The story is God reaching out to us. That's totally different. Totally different. John also talked about it like this. He writes about it in another place, and you've probably heard this verse. He writes about it like this in John 3:16. He says, God so loved, so he gave. He gave his one and only son. So he loved, so he gave. Because he loved, he did something about it. Love in action. Now, if you've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it's so nice that you say you love them. But they don't know you love them if you just say, I love you. You actually have to do something. See, words without action are just words. God loved, and so God gave. The idea of God being loving is okay, but a God that loves and loves so much that he's willing to do whatever he can to give the gift is what the Christmas story is about. God loved, so God gave. He put his heart, he put his love into action. He gave his one and only son, and whoever believes in him, you're not going to die. You're actually going to live an everlasting life. And John carries on in his description of God, and he says, God didn't send his son into the world to condemn the world. Condemned, to punish, to write off, to say that's condemned. If this building was condemned, we would not be allowed to be in this building. God didn't send his son into the world to say it's condemned, written off, end of, destroyed, get lost, finished. God didn't send his son into the world to tell you that you're actually such a rubbish piece of work, that you're such a failure. Why have you done that again? God didn't send his son into the world to find fault with you. God sent his son into the world. It says he didn't send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. And the word save there actually means to salvage, to restore, to make right, to make whole, to rebuild. It doesn't just mean save, like, if you give me your number, I'll save it on my phone. Cool, thanks, got it. It means so much more than that. Save means to repair, to rebuild, to salvage, to put right that which was wrong, to rebuild that which was broken. So God didn't send his son into the world to destroy it, to make you feel rubbish. God actually came to make it right. See, this is nothing like religion. Following Jesus is not a religion. There's nothing like religion. God makes the first move. We didn't try to get his attention. He tried to get ours. It's crazy. That's how John writes about it. And no matter how withdrawn, no matter how disinterested, no matter how angry or bitter or junked up we are, Jesus is not afraid of that. No matter how disinterested or indifferent or how much we ignore him, he's not put off by that. He's not driven away by our unkind remarks because he's willing to do whatever it takes to heal a heart. He still reaches out. Even when we show no interest, he reaches out. He's the one who reaches, even when we're not reaching. He's willing to do whatever it takes to heal a heart. And time again, it's Jesus who takes the initiative to reach out. It's Jesus who speaks out on someone's behalf. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. It's Jesus who reaches out when everyone else has written them off. Oh, don't hang out with that person. You can read it in the biographies. The people that Jesus encountered, so many of those people were written off by society and written off by their culture. But somebody didn't write them off. Jesus didn't write them off. He didn't say, nope, that's a condemned building. Get rid of it. Tear it down. Next. He said, no, I can see something in that person that no one else sees. And he restores them, and he rebuilds them, and he brings them back to a wholeness of life. He's the one that reaches out again and again because he's the one who's willing to do whatever it takes to heal a heart. He sees something that no one else sees. He sees beyond our exteriors and our barriers, our sarcasm. He can see beyond all of our hurts, all of our offenses, all of our defenses that we build up. He sees beyond all of that stuff, and he sees us in a way that nobody else sees us. Every week we've looked at this guy named Paul. Paul was another person who really lived a couple thousand years ago, and he traveled around the Mediterranean, and he helped build churches and do work there. And you can visit places that Paul has been. You can go to places where Paul was in prison. You can go to churches where Paul was. And whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, most, if not all scholars recognize that Paul was a real person who lived in a real place in a real time and did real things. And Paul hated Jesus and hated those who followed Jesus. He had this incredible encounter, and then he became a Jesus follower, a church builder, church planter, cared for others. And he did it so much that he actually died for it, which was crazy. In a nutshell, Paul's life. But Paul, this guy who went from hating Jesus and having a disinterest, writes this about Jesus. It's in his book called Romans, which was a letter he wrote to the Romans. Clever title, huh? Read the book of Letchworth. It's written to the people who live in Letchworth. Anyway, Romans, for the Romans. So Paul writes this. He says, when we were still powerless, Jesus died for us. And then this is like a little caveat. It's like a little aside. Because, come on, let's be honest. Rarely does anybody die for a righteous person. Maybe for a good person, somebody might give their life. But God showed his love for us that while we were still sinners, he died for us. And he carries on. Then it goes on to this next verse. While we were still enemies, he made a way for us to be reconciled to him. He did this through the death of his own Son. So Paul is saying God made the first move. In fact, we weren't actually looking for it. We were still enemies. We were powerless. We were sinners. We were still, not we used to be. We were still powerless. Man, I didn't have any power to, think I was worth saving. I didn't have any great skills, great whatever. I was powerless. While we were still powerless, while we were still sinners, while we were still enemies. See, God didn't reach out to you, to me, to us because we did anything great. He didn't reach out to you because you made enough noise and got his attention. He didn't reach out to you because you made a sacrifice just so the grains would grow and the harvest or your cows would have babies for the next season. He doesn't reach out to you because you try to get his attention. He didn't reach out to you because you were a good person. He didn't reach out to you because you always did the right thing. He didn't reach out to you because you followed all the rules. And he didn't reach out to you because you did something to prove how worth loving you were. He reaches out when we are disinterested and cynical. He reaches out when we're angry and when we're fed up. He reaches out. He still reaches out. He makes the first move all the time. But why in the world does he do this? Why? Because he's willing to do whatever it takes to heal a heart. He reaches out when we laugh at him and when we laugh at those who follow him. He reaches out when we think that everyone who follows Jesus is a fool or an idiot. He reaches out when we argue and when we debate and we compile our lists of reasons why he doesn't even exist. And he reaches out when we call him names. He reaches out when we say things like this. God is arguably the most unpleasant character in all of fiction. He's jealous and proud of it. He's a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. Whew. So writes Richard Dawkins at the beginning of The God Delusion. You might have read it. Or maybe this one by Christopher Hitchens, whom he writes, "The concept of an omniscient God has profoundly damaged humanity. The world would be a great deal better off without him." And in spite of those types of comments, he still reaches out. In spite of the gruff, the anger, the bitter exterior, he still reaches out. He's not going to stop. That's what Paul's writing about. Paul was a real person who lived in a real place and he had a real experience with a real Jesus. And he went from hating Jesus to loving Jesus. He went from hating everybody who followed Jesus to discovering it was more to life. And Paul did it to the point where he actually gave his own life and he was killed for his beliefs eventually. And what would make somebody do that? You only do that if your heart has been healed. See, Paul discovered that even when he didn't want anything with Jesus, when he was still powerless, when he was still an enemy, and when he was still a sinner, Jesus died for him and gave his life for him. Jesus gave everything because Jesus is willing to do whatever it takes to heal a heart. Christmas reminds us of this. Christmas is not a what, Christmas is a why. Why did Christmas happen? Because unto us a son is given. It reminds us that God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever, wherever, whoever chooses to believe and put their trust in him, that they will find a new life, a life that's not going to stop, a living, everlasting life. Christmas reminds us that Jesus was not given to the world to condemn the world, to write it off, to say enough with it, but he was given to the world not to punish, but to salvage, to restore, to save, to rebuild, to repair, to make right. That's what he did. And he was willing to do whatever it takes, whatever it costs, even if it costs his life. But we're going to wrap up and come to land now. And I don't know if you believe the story of Christmas. Maybe you think it's a really nice kind of legend, or maybe it's one of those kind of stories that people tell when they're younger. Maybe it's just something that's nice. And certainly it's not something more like God coming to earth to show us what he is like. Maybe it's not really something like God dying to give us everything. Maybe I don't know where you land with the story of Christmas. I'm not sure where your heart is with the Christmas story. Maybe for you feel like you're the kind of person that's maybe been in hiding, or maybe you've been a bit more indifferent. Maybe like the Grinch, you're the kind of person that would just watch from afar. You're going to just be on the top of the hill and look from a distance. I'll just sort of keep my space. Or maybe like the Grinch, you're a bit more like, anyone comes too close, but just push them away for whatever reason. Maybe it's a good reason. The Grinch had plenty of good reasons to keep people away. They offended him. Maybe you've got good reasons to stay away. I don't know where your heart's at. Maybe you're angry, maybe you're bitter at life, maybe things, it's just whatever. Maybe. Or maybe you could think of nothing worse than becoming a Jesus follower. Did you know that you're in absolutely the right place? Because the requirement to follow Jesus, you know what you need to be like? Powerless, an enemy, and a sinner. That's all Paul had. While I was still powerless, while I was still an enemy, while we were still sinners, you died for us. The entry level, the entry point to start following Jesus is not to prove that you're worth something great and that you're so good that you are able to follow him. The entry point is to be powerless and an enemy of Jesus and a sinner. That's the entry point. Because all of us in this room started following Jesus as doubters. We didn't know until we discovered the one who gave his life for us. And I can assure you of this, Jesus is not going to go away. He will continue to reach out in your life, continue to knock on the door of your heart, and wait for you to open it. He's not going to go away. He sees you in a way that no one else sees you, and he keeps knocking on your heart. And today could be the day when you decide to give up those offenses and let those defenses down. And today could be the day that you accept a gift. The gift of Jesus. And the funny thing about a gift is, even though someone gives you a gift, you have to receive it. You have to accept it. And Jesus doesn't force you to take the gift. It just offers it. It just offers you the gift. The gift is your choice, whether you take it or not. But he offers, nonetheless. He offers again and again. Again and again, because he's willing to do whatever it takes to heal a heart. He says, that's okay, it's still available. The gift's still available. The gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. That's another thing that Paul wrote. I'm going to close, and we're going to have a prayer. It's going to come up on screen. And maybe today is the first day that you feel like you've ever really prayed a prayer that says, Jesus, I accept you into my life. I want you to be part of my life. I want to follow you. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have it all mapped out and understand everything at this point. You just follow and trust. Trust that the God who loves you is reaching out to you. So we're going to put a prayer on the screen, and we can pray it together. And maybe today will be the first day that you've ever prayed that. And if it is, then come and chat to us at the end afterwards as well. That'd be really cool. Because Jesus loves you so much, he gave us the gift of his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. And I pray that this is a December to remember for you. That this December is the December when you began to see everything just a bit differently. And the God who loves you, you just began to discover how much he loves you and reaches out to you. So can we pray this prayer together? It's okay, but we're all going to say it out loud. And whether you might have said it before, but for some of us it might be the first time that you want to say it. If you don't want to say it, that's totally up to you. That's fine. But let's just say this prayer together. God, thank you for reaching out to me while I was still powerless, a sinner and your enemy. I know these things should separate us, but because Jesus died for me, they don't. This is because Jesus paid the penalty for my sins. Thank you for loving me and giving me the gift of Jesus. I ask that you come into my life and live my Savior and friend. Amen. We're going to just close now. I'm going to hand it over to Sam. But if that was the first time you prayed that prayer, or you'd like to chat about what that means a bit more, I would absolutely love to speak with you afterwards. It will just be over here on the side, but I'll just hand it over to Sam now.
Wonderful. Thanks, Joel. Feels a bit strange wrapping up our final, is our final service on a Sunday of this year, 2021. Seems to have flown by. But we're really excited, looking forward ahead to January. So our first meeting back together, all being well, will be Sunday the 9th of January. So we've got 2 weeks when we won't be gathering. But do look out on Christmas Day. We've got some songs we're going to be releasing on our YouTube channel. We'll have an email going on there. So do look out for those. But I do hope and wish you all the best for the Christmas period. Stay safe and have a really great time to spend with loved ones as we reflect on, hopefully, the true meaning of Christmas, as we take moments amidst what might be a busy time to just take that moment to think about what's been shared throughout December, even if you find some time to go back and watch some of the messages as well, just to let them sink into your heart. But it's been so great to journey together, all of those of us who've been able to be here on site and online over this whole year with all its ups and downs. And we're really looking forward to starting again, getting back together in January, and all so much to look forward to into the new year. So do have a great Christmas break, and we really look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks.